Going live on YouTube with tool tips from Little Metal Boxes. It's me, Jennifer, here in my studio doing tool tips with Julia. Here we go. There we are. Hello. Hi, how are you? Welcome. I am so excited to share with you today. Lots of good stuff. We are
First
I'm
of all,
very excited.
who are you?
We just got back from Spain, and one of the reasons that we went to Spain was to do a tour of the Lindstrom Factory, thanks to the good people at Lindstrom for inviting us there and having and being so generous with their time and tools. What? Yes. So they were generous to us, and we want to be generous to our students. So we're actually doing a 4-year anniversary celebration this May with a 4-year or 4-week giveaway. So we've got all kinds of Lindstrom Edge cutters we're giving away and all kinds of swag. So hop over to the Instagram to see the rules for that. Um, but today
You
we
can
want
post
to
the
talk.
rules in the description for this video too.
Yes, we will. And so, but it's on Instagram. So if you want to go over to Instagram, and if you've been a student with us or inspired by us over the last 4 years and have a project or something you want to share, we will post it and we'll give away prizes for 4 weeks. So there you go. Announce them on Tooltip Tuesdays. So we're pretty excited. So they gave us hats. They don't have ears, but they gave us hats. and, so we're pretty excited about our 4-year anniversary. And
We are 4 years. It's a long time, and we're still friends. Yay!
oh my gosh. So, but yes, they gave us a whole bunch of cutters that we can share with you all. Um, but we wanted to, one of the things that we had the opportunity to do while we were in the factory is really talk to them about the manufacturing process of these, the cutters and their pliers, what kind of precision they are made under or made with, and how they differ from with different edges and different shapes. So we will post later on today the tour of the factory with Jan, giving us a really kind of in-depth description of those cutting edges. But what we wanted to talk to you about and sort of show you is what that looks like. So I'm going to flip over to the camera over here so that we can show that and um, some of the cutting edges. There we go. So hello, Lindstrom. There we are. Designed for excellence, and they are indeed. So what we've got, they've got a couple of different lines that I'm going to share with you here. So they have their regular Lindstrom line as well as the Edge, and the Edge is a little bit different line that they have created that is more of a mid-range price rather than the high-end Lindstrom pliers. So these are done with the same sort of precision using newer technology to make these. But they talked about what we want to talk about is actually this cutting edge on each of them. So the three that we have to give away are the 651 and it shows
6151.
6151, sorry. And it shows you basically what that kind of the micro flush edge
The
looks
shape
like.
of it, yeah. I think I love the fact that on their box,
Yeah,
um, it shows you some information. Now, not every one of the cutters we have has a box that has that information on it, but the ones that do, it's really nice because you can see the profile of the cut.
right. So with these cutters, you'll find that not only do they have a different bevel that's ground into the cutters themselves, but the really important point with these cutters is the joint and making sure that it matches up absolutely perfectly. Because if this doesn't match up, then the teeth don't match up. And they want to
Mhm.
make sure this is tight and that this is nice and meets exactly dead on, and then
Mhm.
ground to perfection. And they actually do measurements on every single one of these parts before they even
Right.
put it together.
Yes, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Every single one. has to be checked to a tolerance of, I mean, some ridiculously tiny tolerances, but they,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
if it
just
doesn't hit that mark, it's not going into the, it's not
exactly.
going into a plier or a cutter.
The difference with some of these pliers is you can see these are sort of ground on the front as well as kind of ground cut on the back. And all of these have a little bit of a chamfer that is on the cutting edge of the plier. So the chamfer is, let me zoom in here a lot. Here we go, wrong way. Quite tight. So the chamfer on these is this cutting edge that you see, right? That flash right there. And so these are going to have a peak on the inside of the wire, but the back side, you can see how flat that is. And you can see the chamfer on that is so minute on this edge that it leaves very little on the surface of the wire.
Mm-hmm.
You clip the wire, you get a little bit of a difference on each side. So there we go. So the cut on this side is going to be so tight and so flat for us, for soldering purposes, that is going to be a real flat edge. The other edge is peaked. You can see how it cuts it like that. But here, that edge is so flat, there's almost no peak at all.
So which one was that? That was the
61.
6151, right? So that one has, it basically, if I don't know if you can zoom in a little closer, but
This is the micro flush edge.
it's the micro edge.
Yeah.
Um,
So you can see
so it basically has a flat part, and then it has a slightly angled part, and then another flat, kind of slightly flat part.
so the result is nearly flush, and you can see it from the side view. It is, and for soldering this, butt joint onto something else, you've got a nice flat edge. The other side of this, on the other hand, has that peak, and so it pinches the wire, right? So you can kind of see that pinch.
Right, right. That's the side that is not, you're not using necessarily.
This ground side is going to give you a micro flush edge. The thing that I like too about these is that this is the edge pliers, is that on the inside it tells you what kind of edge it is, what kind of
Mhm.
it's going to have, and the model. But it also gives you the min and max of what you can cut with this. So
Right.
this is really important, note to have, because it tells you with copper or with iron what you're cutting.
Mhm.
And what the max is on both of those. So, and there's also a minimum, because you wouldn't want to cut anything too thin, because that will, the cutters will bang into each other and leave, a notch in those.
Yeah. Though Jan Yarsa, the wonderful fellow who gave us the tour, one of the things he clarified, and one of the reasons, it's people always want to have a completely flush edge, right? Like completely flush, like nothing there. And it's like the problem with that, and they do make some cutters that do that.
Yes, they do.
But the problem with the ultra flush edge is that then you have the sharp ground edges of the tool crashing into each other. And so those, it's very hard to not, I mean, theirs don't, there are off just a tiny bit, but it's really difficult to get an ultra flush edge that doesn't have a very short lifespan, because the edge of the tool is getting dulled. The edge of each jaw is getting dulled on the other side. So with their other cuts, the micro bevel and the flush and what they call the micro edge, the edges bypass each other just a tiny bit, and it protects the cutting edges of the cutters.
Right.
So they have a much longer lifespan.
Yeah, has like a cutting edge, like this is the micro bevel.
Mm-hmm.
So when it cuts, you're looking at like
the cross section
of a wire that is, under 20 gauge even. So
mm-hmm.
this, when you look at it, looks almost completely flat.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, hitting that with a little file or something, if we need it perfectly flat, doesn't take a second to do. But it is so level that, this is almost exaggerated.
Right.
When you look at the wire. So, but I love the fact that they do have like the micro bevel, which just has that little pinch, and then the flush. So their flush cutters are going to give you just that little pinch. What also Jan was mentioning is that the the cut for Lindstrom pliers is designed so it cuts it right smack in the middle of the wire. And
Yeah.
this, again, is more important for other industries like electronics than it is for us, to make sure that there's no like fold over or lapping that can cause a gap when you're soldering
Right.
it, or like um, an uneven part or something that's going to cause some resistance in electronical wiring. But for us, this edge is pretty level.
Mhm.
But this flush edge, that little peak in the middle is almost non-existent. So to hit that with a file really easily, or even sandpaper, when you're talking about a very small wire, that's about as flush as you're going to get it. The other thing that's important to note are the different shapes of the faces. So
Mhm.
some of them are oval like this, and the oval ones are really great and very durable because they have a little more material on the front edge of the cutter, right? So you
Mhm.
have this nice rounded shape, and they really give you, they distribute the cutting force throughout a broader range of the plier.
Right.
Um, so you're not going to run the risk of, damaging them as badly because there's just more material. They're more durable on the point, right?
Mhm.
So for something that's the tapered, like these, excuse me, the tapered point like this one is really great because it gets you into really tiny, tiny areas. Uh,
Right.
so if you have like a limited space, like in between prongs, or you're trying to get into a very small area, these tapered pieces or relieved pieces allow you to sort of really get into those hard to cut areas. So for durability, you can get the oval with the really flush cut. Those are going to last a long time, and these are going to be last a long time, but usually you're cutting a little bit farther up. So for
Mhm.
chain and stuff, when I'm cutting chain, I really love the oval because I can put it down on the table and cut it on the surface. And I know that I can cut this on the tip, and the tips are going to last a long time.
Right. That was one of the points he was making, is that
Right.
really pointy cutters, the tips are the most fragile part. And
Right.
so there, and sometimes that's what you need them for, is to cut, in a tight space at the tip. But then you run the risk of the tips breaking off. So what they found was that if they made options, and rounded the tips of some of the cutters more, so they have more of an oval face, um, it made a tool that was less likely to break because the tips weren't as fragile.
Yeah.
Which for some people that's fine,
Yeah.
right? They don't, they having a tool that's a little more robust is better than having a tool that can get into a really tight space.
Yeah. So,
Does
having
that make sense? Am I right about all that?
yes, yes. And having something, I mean, the Lindstrom, tools, the, regular Lindstrom line is, these are more expensive because they're manufactured a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
These are actually forged out of the same tool forge material that they were using while they were in Switzerland, which they moved all that equipment to Spain, and are just using the same exact tooling that they were using before. So these are actually like a drop forged part. And each one of these is, measured for accuracy at the joint, and then ground for accuracy at the point as well. These are going to be nice because these are a little bit more of an oval shape as well, but
Mm-hmm.
also a super flush cut, but nice and tiny to get into little things. These obviously have, the Lindstrom mark, and they denote the different cutting faces with the circles that they have on the handle. So some of them,
Right. And he told us,
yeah,
and I don't remember now what
it's
that
in
was.
the video that
When?
some of them have one circle, and it is their is the flush cutter. The two circles is like a micro flush, and the other one is a simple flush. But
Okay.
the head shape itself varies. So
Mm-hmm.
like there's like a pointy taper like that. You can kind of see this one's a little pointed taper that is at a little sharper point at the end.
Mm-hmm.
These are more oval shaped, which gives them a little more longevity. But also too, you just want to make sure that you're working within the specs of that particular plier. This one, what they made special for us.
I know. You can't quite see it, Jennifer. Hold it up again so
Hold on.
people can see it. Get the focus.
What? There it
The
is.
focus. No, a little more, a little more, a little more. It's not, we can just barely see what it says.
There it is.
Yes. So they said they laser engraved them with our names and little metal foxes, which was so kind. Makes them really special. And I will never give these away because
No,
my
no.
name on them. And
So
I will always know they're mine.
one of the other things that's really important, I know you've got the other style of handle and leaf on these, but the spring leaf on these is changeable and replaceable.
Mhm.
So have a spring in here. This is the spring for it to kind of go back and forth. And these are two separate pieces of spring steel that pop into the handle. And
Mhm.
take these out if you don't want the spring, or you can get replacements for them and replacements for the handles, which is really kind of nice.
In fact, that was how this whole journey with Lindstrom began, was that I wanted a replacement for exactly one of those kinds of handles for a pair of pliers I had had for 20 years. And
Yes.
they replaced them for me for free, which was very generous.
Well, and these are made with the same, standards as far as, how they're ground and put together and all that. But they're using a different technology to actually create the steel itself. The other thing that I really love about the Edge is that the spring is in
No,
above, so it doesn't catch when
I
you
love that aspect of the Edge pliers. They're so nice.
listen to me. I was like, can I hang them on my tool rack? No, then I won't use them. Because that means I have to put them in a drawer someplace. And I really like to hang mine where I can get to them, really easily. So, but springs are replaceable, handles are replaceable, and they now have a program too that if you do chip, break, dull the ends on the Lindstrom pliers for sure, they can do regrind and replace any of those as well. The other thing that's really important about the cutters is that they have a screw tightening slot here. So
Mhm.
over time, these pliers, with wear and tear, just get a little bit of looseness in this joint
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
actually retighten them so that they will still cut right on that proper edge.
Right.
So,
But that is for the higher end ones. For
yeah,
the Edge line, which is a much more affordable line, they have
yeah,
a riveted joint,
they do.
right? Um, but it's still, the vast majority of pliers and cutters are made with riveted joints, and Lindstrom's seats are impeccable.
Yes.
So it's much more likely that these are not, or much less likely that these are going to loosen up and open up, because the seats are aligned so perfectly. They're not pushing each other away from, they're not pushing each other apart, right?
So the seats are countersunk in here
Mhm.
and literally checked every single one of them.
Right.
Tolerance. So these are just amazing for that. But yeah, there are, they make these cutters for not just the jewelry industry, but medical, aeronautics, orthodontics. And so there's like lots and lots and lots and lots of different pliers that you might not ever even see uh,
Hmm.
because they are designed for, other things. And so, that ultra flush micro bevels and the different shapes and all that stuff is, changes the shape, the cut, the pitch, the angle, all those things can make a difference. So one of the pliers or the cutters that I really recommend is going to be the 6151. Uh,
Hmm.
these are the really nice ones that will cut just about everything we need to do in the jewelry business. They've got a nice sort of a bit of a tapered edge here. They do the micro flush cut, which I really appreciate, so I don't have to do a whole lot of cleanup on the end of the wire. The other two that I've got here, so this is the 6152 flush edge. And
Hmm.
this also has the ground front, and you can see a little bit of difference on the shape of the front. These have a little bit broader edge. The cut itself is going to give you a little bit more of that peak in the middle. So let me show you this one, the difference. Okay.
Right. So the 6151 and the 6152 are both tapered.
Yes.
Um,
It's the cut
It's the cut, it's the edge. One has a micro edge and one has a flush edge.
Right.
And really for our purposes, for jewelry purposes, they're virtually indistinguishable, right?
So you're
It's
looking at like, the difference between like this and not even that.
no, you need to turn the page over. So go to the next page, page 5,
Okay.
and then where you can see under tapered, in the category that says tapered, it shows the micro edge.
Yes.
Yeah, so slide the book over a little bit more. Yeah, there's the micro edge. And then below it is the flush edge. So those two pictures are the, flush edge and micro edge. So you can see they're very, very similar. Drop the book down just a hair and move it to your right. Yeah, so you can see the flush edge has a little bit more of a sort of cliff face in the center, like it's a vertical cliff face, whereas the micro edge, it's more of a slope. But as I said, for our purposes, essentially they are identical, because the other two parts of those where the two jaws are coming together are essentially cutting identically.
Yeah.
All right.
So the other one is the micro edge, which is super, super flat. So this has just like, you can't even see the camera on this side at all. I mean, it's completely smooth across that front. So it just gives you, we've got 3 different versions of the edge here. And just
actually, no, I think we only have 2 different versions of the edge. I think what you've got there is 6151 and 6152 have the same head shape, and they have a micro edge and a flush edge. And then 6159 is the pointy one. So it's, the head is different, but it has the same edge as the 6152.
Right.
Right.
So, yes. 6152.
Right. So edges are the same on 2 of them, and the heads are the same on 2 of them, but it's not the same tube.
So you can see on this one, like the cutting edge on these are the same, but the different shape.
The heads are different shapes. And then on the other one, the other 2, the heads are the same, but the edges are slightly different. Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think with any of the, the micro flush edges, you're going to be doing pretty good.
Right. As I said, for jewelry purposes, they are indistinguishable. And actually, even the ones that are the pointy ones are not significantly smaller than the other ones. Again, from a jewelry perspective.
Right.
I think you would still be able to get in and, cut off a prong, or, cut a wire or whatever. Of course, it's always true that there's a sweet spot on the cutting edge. And so the sweet spot generally is not either right at the very base or at the very tip. It's kind of tends to be sort of in the middle. Jan Yarza was saying that the sweet spot varies a bit from type to type. But in general, when you're cutting wire, if you can, the deeper you can cut it into the throat of the jaws, the more leverage you have, and the less force you're applying to the jaws itself. So the longer they will last, right? The less likely you are to break them. If you cut everything right at the tips.
Yeah, but everything, that sweet spot, he said, is like right, that third that's in the middle is usually the sweet spot. But yeah, I mean, if you're planning on, like with me, one of the things that I'm doing a lot of cutting with is I'm cutting, measuring chain or wire on the table.
Right.
So, I can show you what I mean by this.
And you have to use the pointy tips then.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no, I need to use something that's going to be.
You want something that's a little more rounded, but you have to use the tip of the cutter to do it. Right.
Right.
And so for you, having the rounded tips is better, because then it's not so pointy jamming into the surface.
Yeah. So what I'm usually doing, whether I'm measuring wire or chain, I usually have it, laid out. And I love, this is my magnetic
adhesive.
That's adhesive back. I love this thing. So this way I can kind of measure, to what I need. And then I'm going, straight down on the wire, on the table, and
just clipping. Right.
Yeah. So I need to have enough, material at the front that I'm not going to damage these things over time.
Right.
And having something that is a flush cutter or pointy and or even the oval. The oval sometimes I've got a lot of leverage on the front.
Mm-hmm.
Just depending on what you're doing, this can be, there we go. So I can measure it where I need it and clip it. And I
Mm-hmm.
get this tiny little chain cut really well right on the tip. Same is true if I'm using, um, any kind of wire, if I'm, measuring out wire on that surface, I can measure it, mark it like that. I don't have to cut it on the tip at that point. I can slide it down and cut a little bit deeper if I need to.
Right.
And that gets it a little bit closer to that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me
Good
that
call.
flush edge, right on the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, if this feels a little sharp or, you didn't clip it all the way, just hit it with a file and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Literally just, one will
One
take,
swipe.
one swipe will take.
One swipe, a single swipe, a
Yeah.
single wipe is enough.
Yeah. So, but that makes it, perfect for, soldering and getting that edge flat. If this isn't flat enough for you already. So
Right.
it's
Which it
just,
may be, it's like
yeah,
that may be all you need.
it really, really is. But do pay attention to, the difference on the ends, because one end is going to be peaked and the other end is going to be flush.
Right. Yes. And that's always going to be the case, right? Double flush cutters exist. They are so delicate and fragile. Right. And it's like, it's like, is it really worth it?
Double flush cutters are like these, and they're basically like shears.
Right. So they're bypass cutters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're good for some things, but they're not good for everything.
Right.
It's a lot easier just to, make a cut, turn them over and cut again so that you are, cutting both ends
Mm-hmm.
flat. It's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to do that and you're not losing a lot of wire doing that. So
Save your scrap, send it back to be recycled. It's one of the great things about our business is that we can recycle all our scrap.
that's right. Well, Julia, I had such fun at the Lindstrom Factory with you and Helen.
No, it was the best.
And I want to thank Ian for inviting us and Jan for hosting us while we were there and showing us around and spending so
And
much.
all of the lovely employees on the floor and in the lab,
And the
who
interns,
talked to us. And yeah,
and the interns were so
the
sweet.
interns were so sweet. Our driver, Luis, was lovely. I mean, everyone could not have been nicer.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it was fun to meet the interns that were there, the engineering interns that are at Lindstrom and stuff. Were just delightful and wonderful to meet. So to them, to all them, and thank you so much. And take a look because we'll have the tour from the factory on a different video that's coming up this afternoon. So keep an eye out for that as well. And Jan goes a little more into detail, and you can see in the manufacturing plant how those steps are done all the way along. So, thanks a lot, and have a great afternoon. We'll see you next Tuesday for Tool Tip Tuesday.